Welcome to the Exhorter podcast, where it is our aim to stir up love and good works through bite-sized biblical discussion. Nate, what are we talking about?
Well, Kyle, you and I went to coffee earlier this week, or I guess last week.
We did. I had a cortado. It was delicious.
Yeah, sipping with your pinky up, weirdo. We talked about stories about high school, and some of those stories we probably won't share on the podcast. But in any case, I was just thinking, it's mid-August. Some students have already gone back to school. Some are going back very shortly, or will have gone back by the time this airs. And I can remember as a young Christian, school was very challenging for my faith. And so I just wanted to talk about some things today that I would have liked to hear as a Christian in high school going back to school. So let's start with the question, what was the intersection of your faith and school like in middle or high school?
I was fortunate that the school I went to had a large, I'm saying probably like 30%, which is pretty large for one demographic, large population of Mormon folk. And I was friends with a lot of them. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of good influences, and I was around good kids. So I think I was fortunate in the sense that I did naturally find through some of the activities and some of the groups I was with a lot of good influences. And so that was a good thing. I think that's one of those things is who you surround yourself with, and around in high school makes all the difference on the type of pressure put on you, the type of language that comes out of your mouth, the type of things the decisions you'll make, or whether you'll talk about your faith at all. Yeah. And I think that I was fortunate to be around a lot of people who would talk about their faith a lot because they're kind of like groomed that way. Yeah. But I think that if I hadn't had that, I knew what junior high was like. I knew I didn't talk to anyone about my faith, in earlier times. And so I think it was important for me to have that, and it was really good for me to have that influence. When you have your tribe, right, you have your people, what you end up doing is you think, I have this safety or security place where I can be myself. Yeah. And that's good. That's not good if that tribe is not good. Yeah. Because that's what we do. We blend in. We blend into our surroundings as much as we can, so we don't get, especially when you are 5 foot, maybe 4'8" or something. Red hair, glasses, ginger. Yeah, ginger. If you don't find your way into a tribe, you'll find your way into a trash can. So you just gotta. I was really worried about that as a freshman going into high school. Like, I was so worried I was just going to get bullied and picked on so much.
So can you title this episode "Find Your Tribe" or "Find a Trash Can"?
Yeah, or "Find a Trash Can." Yeah, that's.
Kyle, what about you, man?
Well, I had a similar experience as John, being a band geek, having a lot of Mormon friends. And morally, I didn't encounter a lot of serious temptation. Yeah. There was some, my friends used different, more colorful language than I did. But they quickly figured out that I wasn't about that. And I became more of a thermostat, not a thermometer, that they cleaned up their language around me rather than me adjusting to them. So I didn't face any major, like drugs, alcohol, sex, things like that, that, the big three you worry about with kids in public school. Right. I didn't really encounter much of that. But for me, I think it was the genuineness of my faith was made evident at times, that with my Mormon friends, obviously, morally, we're pretty much on the same page. Sure. But doctrinally, and our understanding of Jesus and concepts of God and his nature and the church, we're going to have some pretty significant differences there. Right. And about the Bible and inspiration and what is authoritative, what books are not. And there were times where topics like that came up, and I felt like I was revealed to be a fraud. Oh. I knew the truth. I knew the answers. And I knew I was right. Sure. I didn't know how to explain that.
You learned so much more principle than you did book, chapter, verse on things that you had conviction, but without any proof.
The rapture came up, and I was like, that's not going to happen. Jesus comes back on the last day, and all the dead rise. And if you're alive, you go up, and then there's judgment, and that's it. There's no rapture. well, yeah, there is. It's right there in Matthew 24. And I was like, but that's not what it means. Well, your pastor just didn't teach you about it yet. And I was like, but that's not right. But how do I
explain that?
I don't know how to explain it.
This is probably not really helpful for the direction you're going with.
Thank you for
because
you can stop
we're talking
now.
about having like positive influences, but the problem with those influences too is letting your guard down around those influences and being influenced by them. So a lot of times, if kids gravitate to other kids that are quote Christians, you can also be kind of pulled away by false doctrine and those things as well. You know, having good moral people and people around you is good, but also you still have to have your defenses up. You still have to know when they're trying to recruit you or when they're trying to kind of win you over and where you're standing. I felt like I get hit with all three of those big three as soon as I got into the workplace. Like it happened a little later on with me where everyone was coming at you with, you know, influences for sex, drugs, and rock and roll or whatever it was.
The point I was trying to make, though, is that you asked how school impacted my faith, and that's how it impacted me. It was a wake-up call.
Yeah.
It was a catalyst for me. Failure can be a major catalyst, and I failed big time in Bible conversations. I failed to represent Christ and the truth that I knew was correct and accurate, and that failure motivated me. It was the catalyst for me to study harder than I ever had up to that point in my faith.
I love your attitude towards failure, right? It's not a fail if you learn something. And obviously we don't want to come into it thinking like, oh, well, I'm going to epically fail at this. But if we do, because it's going to happen, let's learn from it. I really appreciate your guys' experiences with school is so much better than mine. I'm like, oh, wow, they're the good kids. Because when I went to school, even though like I went to church every Sunday and every Wednesday night and I was baptized, I did not want my friends to know that I was a Christian. And I did not influence them. I let them influence me. And it was just not a pretty picture. So when you said, you know, you guys were influenced by sex, drugs, and rock and roll later in life. Well, that you're in the workplace, John, that it was just introduced. For me, it was like freshman, sophomore year, maybe, where that became just part of what we talked about within the group. Not even that. It was like 7th or 8th grade. That became what we talked about in the group all the time, or at least relatively regularly. And so looking back, and you guys already touched on it, looking back, I see that was totally related to the people that I hung out with. And I remember one of the passages that has just stuck with me is 1 Corinthians 15:33. And basically bad company corrupts good morals. The people that you spend your time with are going to influence you for good or for evil.
It's not like those things didn't come up in conversations. I just think it was a little easier to stay away from them or to stay truer to my thinking by having good moral people around me that I could lean on or I spent most of my time with.
But so when those conversations came up, was that with your Mormon friends or your morally upright friends, or was that just with like some acquaintances that you knew?
Well, I mean, the thing is, every class you have, you try to kind of get like 2 or 3 friends, right? Whoever you're sitting around with that you can stand or can stand you.
Sure.
So you end up developing a few friends in every class, and those aren't usually all your friends. And so more acquaintances or those kind of people around. Yeah. And so if I remember back, I mean, you can't pick and choose that.
Yeah.
That happens to you. And so that's what you get. And so it's going to happen. You can't avoid it.
Yeah.
Obviously, kids now, even more so, you can't avoid these kinds of conversations. You can't avoid the kind of imagery. You can't avoid any of those things. It's going to come up. It doesn't matter if you have a good tribe or good group of friends. It's just one of the reasons why we moved to have my kids go to school in the school track with other Christians from our church, because they were isolated all by themselves in another school. And I wanted them to grow up in the next 5-6 years through high school, having some people they knew were like anchors, right? Where they could go and they had like faith and they could go hang out with if they needed to, or reach out, or could watch over them and hold them accountable. That's the thing is having people that can hold you accountable and back and forth, especially through a high school world, is super necessary because your parents aren't around there all the time to know. They can only see the symptoms of what's happening, the reactions of whatever's happened at school. They get that, but they can't see what's happening in the situation scenarios you're in.
John, you bring up a great point. When Jesus sent out his disciples to go preach and teach, he didn't send them out one by one.
No,
he sent them out two by two. There's something really valuable about having other positive influence, and not just positive influences, but morally upright and Christian influences with us and around us frequently.
The apostles did that too, right? They called out each other.
Oh, wow.
When
Paul did to Peter.
Right. When they were not doing right. And that's honestly, you need that.
Yeah.
Like we need that more in high school.
Yeah.
Kids who have like friends in faith and people that can also hold them accountable and then teach them to not be angry at that. How do you take criticism well? How do you get called out on those things? These things are important,
Yeah. So another thing I know that I struggled with in high school, well, I already alluded to it, which was that I was really afraid to stand up and say that I was a Christian. I did not want to.
It hasn't gotten any easier, dude. Kids in school now.
Oh, do I think it gets?
I know. I would kind of assume the climate for kids now versus 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Saying I'm a Christian.
Oh, yeah.
Is a lot more volatile just because of the political climate and the name being kind of trashed. And
so I thought of that passage in Matthew chapter 10, verses 32 and 33. So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I also will acknowledge before my Father is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I also will deny before my Father who is in heaven. And I know for me, I was deathly afraid of acknowledging Jesus in front of my friends in high school. So I wanted to ask you guys, did you struggle with being afraid to talk about your faith with your friends in middle or high school?
I didn't bring up conversations because I was afraid that they would know more than me about my own religion.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I kind of probably avoided that.
I wasn't so afraid when it was superficial, but like I shared earlier, a meaningful conversation or a deep conversation where you needed to know the scriptures solidly, I shied away from those moments. And I think that's, again, a big motivation in my later years in high school and after high school to study and have better answers and be more confident in that. But in a superficial sense, a lot of my friends went to church, and so I felt comfortable.
What do you think would have helped you be more comfortable in those conversations or willing to address those topics that maybe you didn't feel as comfortable talking about because you felt like you didn't know it? What would have helped you do that?
I mean, perspective on how short high school is. I mean, that's the thing. It's like a lot of times you're just worried about the there and the now. And
4 years seems like it's going to be forever.
Seems like it's going to be forever. And you're worried about what people are going to think of you. You don't want to stand out.
Yeah.
Stand out, you're picked on.
Yeah.
You're picked on, it sticks with you for years. No one wants that.
Sure.
It feels like right now we live in a society that in schools and everything there, the whole point is to have all this empathy and acknowledgement for those who are different and those who stand out. But it's not changed. It's still the same.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get picked on. You're going to get called out for any reason whatsoever. But at the end of the day, it's such a drop in the bucket of time, and it goes away. It goes by. And I don't hang out with anyone from high school.
I talked to maybe two people from high school.
Maybe Facebook friends, acquaintances, barely. I mean, and that's been the case for like even since college. Like maybe there's one or two people I went to college with from high school. My brother called me in my sophomore year from college. He was at Florida College and said, just take your GD and get out. Because, he was just basically saying like, it
doesn't matter.
And I enjoyed my high school time, but I do remember thinking that, this is it. This is the most important thing in life. And the relationships that you made, it was so important to be cool and to not stand out and to be accepted by people. That sense of acceptance is a huge part of conformity and a huge part of adolescence.
Yeah.
Forgetting who they are. That I like that when people put that up on the threshold, right?
Yeah. Don't forget who you are.
Don't forget who you are.
Yeah.
Because you can easily forget who you are as soon as you see someone next to you getting picked on for something that you are as well. You're just like, oh.
Yeah.
I'm going to be quiet.
Well, I'm not going to tell them that I'm a Christian.
Because kids suck. I
Yeah.
mean, there's always
They
kids
can
out
be
there
mean.
that are going to be mean, but it's only a short time.
Yeah.
And it's gone.
What would you tell a student now who's going to step into the classroom this coming week or just did recently if they feel afraid to stand up for being a Christian? What would you tell them?
Get your GED and get out.
Confidence is key, right? And people always say that, but
Yeah.
it's true. If you know who you are,
Yeah.
the people who go through life and have a strong sense of self and confidence in who they are, they'll get picked on, but not for very long.
Yeah.
A lot of people will tend to respect those people who are very assured at who they are and who aren't flip-flopping on the things that they find acceptable or not.
So then how do you develop that? Like, can we just tell someone, well, just be confident in who you are? I mean, does that happen because you listen to one podcast episode? I mean, this is a pretty good podcast, so maybe. How do you develop that sense of confidence in who you are?
I don't think you can do it on your own. You need to have people who advocate for you and who will help sharpen you, as iron, and friends that are good morals. And I think as parents, it's my job to make sure my kid develops that character.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like we can't do that until they're out there testing it. But I think it's on the parents' job a lot of times to help cultivate the environment.
Sure.
For that to happen, but you got to be tested, and I think you need to have those good influences around you. I don't really know any other way other than trial by fire.
Yeah, going there. Well, I like what you said about Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpens iron. You referenced that passage and developed that confidence by having someone to hold you accountable. And don't think that I'm afraid to stand up for this today, so I'm terrible. It's more like, well, I have this fear, so I need to work on it. And it's going to be a process to grow out of that. And the second thing is, there are times when I now feel that fear of, if I share that I'm a Christian, I'm going to get chastised, or I perceive that I'm going to get chastised. So you just do it anyways, even in the face of that feeling.
Yeah. When you watch the kids in VBS, you see these kids kind of over a week time, they grow stronger together. They become more comfortable with each other, and their discussions get better and more supportive. And I think that's the kind of mentality. So if I were to tell someone right now, you're going into school, like when you have a bad day or you're tempted or you fail that challenge, of defending your faith and everything, call a friend up from church that is in the same place, and I guarantee you'll have something to talk about. Like, share with them. That's your place to share with them the struggles that you have. Ask them for strength, support, pray about it. Pray for God's strength.
Which gets back to kind of the first passage that we referenced, 1 Corinthians 15:33, like bad company corrupts good morals. Well, the opposite of that is true too. Good company builds those morals up. And so it's so important, the people that you choose to build relationships with. So build relationships, John, like you're saying, build relationships with people at church so that you, when you are tempted and tested by the world, by friends at school, that you have a friendship or relationship that you can look to for some help.
I think it'd be important to emphasize to high schoolers today, teenagers in public schools, also consider not just what you might benefit from a friendship. Look around your classroom, look around the school, and look for someone that is on the periphery, someone that is alone, someone that for whatever reason is an outcast, and you go and be their friend. Think about, what friendships can I have something to offer them? It's nice to think about friendships where I benefit other Christians, positive influence, the keeping an eye on each other kind of mentality or accountability. But I think it's important to look and see, where can I be of service to someone else and make their life better or make their experience better.
Excellent. Go ahead, John.
I would love for kids to have that kind of confidence and that kind of self-assuredness. That's key. When you see a kid like that who knows who they are and has so much confidence in themselves and in their life, you just know that they're going to be okay, And for those who aren't or don't have those peers, I mean, like Kyle said, you're going to have to go out and find, those good peers. But I was thinking of things that, Nate, you've talked about in the past, like journaling and prayer and things like this too. It's like, maybe you don't have that friend yet, and it's hard. You got to get out there the first week or two and start making those friends, because everyone then buddies up. But just take those thoughts and feelings you have, journal, pray, talk to your parents, talk to people. Don't just bottle it up. A lot of kids will just kind of bottle it up, say, I'm fine, I'm good, and fester, and the low self-image and self-esteem just drops, and it just gets worse over time. So I would love if I could give every kid, something. It's just that confidence and that self-assuredness that they're going to be okay. They're there to learn some stuff, have a good time, meet some friends, have some good times, learn how to be real human beings.
Yeah. Kyle, I want to touch on what you mentioned, that you'd love for kids to have the attitude of this is an opportunity to serve, because that was the next thing I wanted to talk about. In Ephesians 2, verses 8 through 10, for by grace you've been saved through faith, and this isn't your own doing, it's the gift of God, not a result of work, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And I want to focus on that part of it that says that we were created for good works. Instead of thinking about school as like, don't do this, don't pick the wrong friends, don't, use the wrong language, don't be afraid to stand up for your faith. What are some things that students going back to school can focus on positively with their faith in school?
Yeah, we don't want to make the mistake of the church in Ephesus that we talked about in a previous episode, where we define ourselves by what we're not, all important things. But if that's all we are, is just, I'm not this, I'm not that, I resist that. Well, we need to define what we stand for and what our important objectives are. And that's service. I think it's important to emphasize to teenagers, you have something to offer. You are not a 0-talent servant. You might only be a 1-talent servant, but you might not even realize you have more to offer than just that.
Yeah.
But you're not a 0-talent servant. You have something, abilities and skills and time, and you are able to do something in the church or just in service to others that will glorify God. You have a use and a function in the body already.
Amen. Well, and the influence that you have, good or bad, can and often does stick with people years into the future. I was talking to one of my former students. I'm a teacher, and I think this will be my 8th year teaching. And I was talking to one of my former students just the other day, and he was telling me from 4 or 5 years ago, one of his friends in class, what that student had done 4 or 5 years ago in class had impacted my other student for several years after. And so it's recognizing, like you said, Kyle, that you have an impact and you have an influence. Whether it's good or bad is going to be up to you. So use it for good.
Well, and learning too that putting your faith into action is important, and that works of service are your faith. That is your faith. My dad would take me to help people move. We would do projects for people, fixing up parts of their house. We had a guy at church that was deployed 2 or 3 different times in a short span of time to Iraq shortly after 9/11 and needed a new driveway. So my dad organized a bunch of people from church, and I was there scooping up gravel and helping to set formations and the forms in the ground, forms, and helping out with that. And he would involve me in that stuff. I think he was trying to teach me that works of service, that is your faith in action. Yeah. And it might not seem like there's a direct connection to mowing somebody's lawn or helping them move or unpack to being a Christian, but that's your faith in action.
And it says there that we were created for good works. And when a tool is used properly, that tool will last a long time and it will function well. So if we are made for good works and we do good works, we're going to function well. And Jesus knows how we were made. He made us. And if he says we need to go out there and do good works, well, then that's what's going to be best for us too. So looking back on your time in school, what would you have done differently?
I mean, I probably would have taken advantage of the little resistance that I had against my faith by having such great more old people around me and tried to evangelize a little bit more or try to influence, others.
Yeah.
Versus just I kind of wrote it, going through the motions. And I think I had little resistance. And so I enjoyed the little resistance.
Yeah.
Versus using that as a good opportunity and grounds for growing stronger in my faith earlier in my life. Because I do think of some people that I had really good relationships with, and I never had relationships or friendships with them after school.
Yeah, I felt that contentment that I wasn't necessarily challenged in my faith, and that created a lack of effort. That comfort didn't cause me to work very hard at trying to teach others about the Bible. And I do think often about the missed opportunities as a teenager.
So let's pretend that our kids are going to school this week. What would you tell your kids before going back to school?
Don't talk back to your grandma.
It's because your kids are homeschooled.
I saw this guy on social media, and he was talking about how he tells his kids every day. And I wrote it down to remind myself to do the same. I don't always do it. But as a parent, I love this. He tells his kid every day, I love you. I'm proud of you. I think you're terrific. And I'm glad that you're mine. And I think the effort of doing that on such a continual basis is doing what we were talking about, is giving kids this grounding and this understanding that they have security and they have safety at home, and they have support from those who love them, and that they are not in this on their own.
Yeah.
And I think I want them to be strong in who they are and build a strong character, a godly character.
Yeah.
And I also want them to understand and know that I am here and always will be here, and I'm proud of them and I love them even when they do wrong, and I'm here to forgive them. And it's our goal to show them what God is like and to emulate that for them in their lives at such a young age. So that's what I would just tell them is stick through it. Every day is a new day. You're going to have bad days.
Yeah.
You're going to have bad days, and you just got to shake them off. That reflection of what was good, what was bad.
Yeah.
Always go through that and realize that, there's always going to be good too.
Yeah. Kyle, what would you tell your kids? We're assuming, let's just pretend for a moment that they're going to
ever went
public
to
school.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of keep it simple, keep it short. If you start giving too much messaging, it's you don't remember it all. So I like simple, pointed. I would say something to the effect of remember who you are.
Yeah.
Or let your light shine. That's something along those lines. Let your light shine. Do the good works. Remember who you are. Do what you're supposed to do. And remember God's watching. And you want his approval more than anyone else's.
Yeah. What do you think parents should hear? What do you think parents need to hear right now?
School's hard.
Yeah.
We forget about how hard it is as soon as we leave it, as we're out.
Yeah.
But school's difficult on kids. The idea of pressure from peers is not easy. And so we need to give them not a long rope, not by any chance of imagination do we need to back off too much, but try to be a helpmeet, beneficial. Talk to them every day when they come home.
Yeah.
Talk to them about how their day was, how they felt, why they feel that way. What can make it a better day, that kind of thing. Spend that time and effort to develop those habits with their kids, because sometimes I think, bad grades or they act up or they get in trouble, come down so hard, and it just solidifies them and that bad behavior as who they are sometimes. And I don't think you really want to do that. You want to encourage them and remind them and buffet them that they are good and they can do good. And they need to make those choices. And as soon as they make those choices, they'll be heading down the right path. So just give them love and encouragement that you're there for them.
Yeah.
I think parents should be reminded of one of the main messages from Ecclesiastes, that there is nothing new under the sun. It's always been challenging to raise children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And it's tempting to look at my circumstances today and the climate and environment I am trying to raise my children in and think that the deck is stacked against you more than any other generation before you. And no, it's not.
Yeah. Woe is me. Oh,
my mom
so
used to say, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
That was just the daily thing.
Sun will rise tomorrow.
Yep.
Your grandparents faced maybe different sets of challenges, but it was not easy for them to raise godly children. Your great-great-great-grandparents had challenges. I mean, you look at even the patriarchs and how poorly the oldest 8, 9, 10 children of Israel acted towards their own brothers. So even in the family, there was negative influences. Reuben clearly was not the best example as the oldest brother.
Yeah.
And Simeon and Levi, they all made some mistakes and they thought it was a good idea to sell their brother as a slave. So even in the homeschooling environment,
Yeah.
it's not like it's going to be easy to raise
Sure.
God-fearing children. So
Yeah.
just remind yourself of that the challenges you're facing are not insurmountable.
Yeah.
It is possible to raise godly children even today in the climate and environment we live in.
I love that advice. There's nothing new under the sun. Well, fellas, I think that's all that I had on back to school. Pick your people well, choose your friends wisely, stand up for your faith. Don't be afraid to be a Christian. And then use school as an opportunity to do good. Go sit with the kid who maybe is a little bit lonely, and be generous to the person who needs something, and care about the people around you.
Thanks, Nate, for what a great topic this is. And hopefully we'll get this one out here before school starts so you can be mindfully thinking about this. And that's what I would encourage everyone to do. Take a moment and think to yourself, are you prepared for school coming up? And have you prepared your kids? Have you prepared them to be thinking about these kinds of things and what we're talked about today as far as who are they going to be? What kind of character were they going to be? Every year is a great time to push the reset button and kind of get stoked up for the next year. And so hopefully you'll take that time to do so. And we thank you for tuning in, and we hope that you'll listen to more. And if you find it valuable, share it with your friends. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.
You know, from time to time, I think about going back to school, and then that thought passes pretty quick. And I remember, I don't ever want to go back to school again. And so,
You know,
for those headed back to school this next month, enjoy.
so for me, like, I really enjoyed high school. Like, I don't know, I did.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, buddy.
Well, I enjoyed high school too, because I skipped more classes than I attended. So
That's right.
It was-
That's good. Okay. That's
public
excellent.
school in the state of Oregon is pretty laughable. So I actually had a pretty easy time skipping classes, but still graduating on the honor roll. So
California's way better.
yeah.
Public school in California is way better. So much better. Yeah, you know, I don't know. I liked it. I was good at it, I think.
Just tell me what to do. I'll do
It took
it.
me a couple years.
After my third time through freshman year, it started to click. I started to really understand what this is about. Yeah.
Oh, I was a big deal in the band room.
Yeah. Well, I know, Mr.
Next episode, humility.
Mr. State Tuba Man over here.
I played football. Guess what position?
Water boy.
No.
Not what?
For reals. Guess what
I
position?
would guess linebacker.
Oh, okay, yes, outside linebacker, but that was not my primary position. You'll never guess my primary position.
You were a runner, so I would.
Were you a
think,
kicker?
No.
No,
Okay, I didn't think so.
wide receiver.
No. Guess again. There's only 11 positions on any one side of the ball.
Were you
Right guard.
Did you play both ways?
No, right next to the right guard.
Okay. Tackle?
No.
I don't know what the positions
You
are.
were not
The guy who
center.
hikes the
You were not
ball?
center.
I was center.
How are you center?
I was center. I was front and center. Yeah, that was me.
Dude, were you like, what'd you
400
weigh?
pounds? Yeah,
No.
what did I weigh? 160, baby. Kyle, what would you tell your kids?
Yeah, I'd tell them every morning, you're a disappointment to me. And then that would motivate them
To be better.
to earn my
Honestly,
approval.
Earn your approval at all
They would
times.
they would have to work harder to earn
I
my
think
approval.
that's,
So it's motivation.
a little struggle is good for kids.
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
a radio, I don't even know what to call it, radio spot where they were making fun of Father's Day, and it said, in honor of Father's Day, management wants everyone to know how disappointed we are in you.